All right, so billions of dollars. Hidden all over the world, dodging taxes.
Yeah.
It's a global game of hide and seek. And today, we're diving deep into how countries are teaming up to catch these financial ninjas.
It is a fascinating world, isn't it? You're right. The stakes are huge. We're talking about lost revenue that could be funding schools, hospitals, you name it.
Exactly, which is why this OECD report, and that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, for anyone who hasn't brushed up on their international acronyms lately, is so important. They've put together what's essentially a global playbook for tackling tax crime based on a survey of 31 countries.
And they're not mincing words here. This isn't about accidental slip-ups on your tax return.
Yeah.
This report is all about intentional tax crime, elaborate schemes, hidden assets, the works.
Okay, so let's unpack this playbook. Principle number one is all about making sure tax offenses are actually considered, well, crimes. Seems self-explanatory, but I'm guessing it's more complicated than that.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Turns out countries define tax crime differently. Some treat even minor deliberate noncompliance as criminal, while others set the bar higher, requiring aggravating factors or significant sums of money.
Right.
And then there are those who specifically go after organized tax crimes. Think of it as the mob of the financial world.
So we're talking about kind of a spectrum of offenses here. What kind of shady dealings are we talking about specifically?
Well, the report gives some interesting examples. On one end, you've got things like failing to keep proper records. Pretty straightforward. But then it gets wilder. Did you know some criminals use something called Zapper software?
Zapper software sounds more like something you'd use to fight aliens in a video game.
Right. But this is serious stuff.
Yeah.
It's designed to erase sales data, making it look like transactions never even happened.
Nah.
Super hard to detect.
Wow, that's sneaky. So it's not just about going after individuals, it's also about the people who help them get away with it, right? Like
Right.
the financial advisors, lawyers who might be in on the scheme.
Exactly. The OECD calls them enablers, and the report really stresses holding them accountable too.
Wow.
In fact, 22 countries in the report said they can hit these enablers with the same penalties as the tax evaders themselves.
Wow. So it's like they're saying, look, if you're going to help someone pull off a heist, you're just as guilty as the person who cracks the safe.
Exactly. It sends a strong message. And it makes sense because these enablers play a key role in making these schemes work.
Okay, so we've got laws in place. We're going after both the criminals and the people who help them. What's next in this global crime fighting playbook?
Well, you don't just want to be running around like a bull in a china shop.
Right.
Principle number 2 is all about having a strategy, a well-thought-out plan of attack.
So not just randomly chasing after every lead?
Right. It's about being smart with your resources. The report emphasizes a multi-pronged approach. Yes, you need to crack down on serious crime, but you also need to encourage voluntary compliance.
So a bit of carrot and stick.
Huh.
Make it easy for people to do the right thing, but also make it clear that there are consequences if they don't.
Exactly. And some countries have taken this to a whole other level. Finland, for example, has a national strategy specifically designed to tackle their shadow economy. All those under-the-table dealings.
Wow. A whole national strategy just for that. They're not messing around.
Not at all. It just goes to show how seriously they're taking this issue. They've analyzed the types of tax crime they face, assessed their resources, and developed a targeted response.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well,
Okay, so you've got your laws, your strategy. Now you need the tools to actually catch these guys. Principle 3 is where things start to sound like a spy thriller.
Right. We're not just talking calculators and spreadsheets here. This is about giving investigators the powers they need to uncover the truth, no matter how well it's hidden.
All right, hit me with it. What kind of tools are we talking about?
We're talking search warrants, surveillance, even undercover operations.
Whoa, for real, like something out of a movie.
Absolutely. Take Australia, for example. They've got laws allowing police to remotely search digital data, which is crucial in today's world.
Especially with all the online financial platforms and cryptocurrency out there.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting, even tricky. All this digital evidence, especially data stored in the cloud, it creates a jurisdictional nightmare.
Oh, right, because if the data is stored on a server in another country, whose laws apply?
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a question investigators are grappling with worldwide, and it's something we'll definitely want to dig into deeper a bit later.
Okay, so let's say investigators have done their job, gathered the evidence, and caught the bad guys. What happens next?
Well, that's where Principle 4 comes in. And this one's always satisfying, seizing those criminal assets.
Ah, yes. Hitting them where it hurts their wallets.
Exactly. Because remember, for many of these criminals, it's all about the money. Freezing and confiscating assets disrupts their operations and can be a powerful deterrent.
And when we're talking about tax evasion on a global scale, I'm guessing the amounts of money involved are mind-boggling.
You have no idea. The report said that in just 1 year, the 31 countries surveyed seized over 1.6 billion euros in assets linked to tax crimes.
1.6 billion euros. That's more than some countries' entire GDP.
It's a staggering sum, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it highlights how seriously countries are taking this fight. But here's the thing. It's not just about going after the obvious assets, bank accounts, fancy cars, that sort of thing.
So it's not just about taking away the criminals' toys. They're digging deeper than that.
Much, much deeper. We're talking about tracing those assets wherever they might be hidden, even if it means targeting third parties.
So, like, if the criminals have stashed their money in a friend's account or used it to buy property under someone else's name.
Exactly. Because remember, these criminal networks are often incredibly sophisticated. They use shell companies, offshore accounts, you name it.
Wow, it's like a financial game of hide and seek on a global scale.
It really is. And that's why this next principle is so crucial. Principle number 5 is all about defining responsibilities within a country, making sure everyone's clear on their role in this fight.
Because if you don't have a clear chain of command, it could turn into chaos pretty quickly. Imagine everyone running around like a chicken with its head cut off.
Chaos is not a good look when you're trying to fight sophisticated financial crime. Clear organization is key. Some countries, like Italy, even have specialized tax police forces.
Wait, seriously? They have a whole police force dedicated just to tax crimes.
They do. They're called the Guardia di Finanza. Pretty cool name, right?
That's amazing. What kind of training do these guys go through? Do they have to be like financial ninjas?
I imagine it's pretty intense. They're dealing with some of the most complex financial crimes out there. But not every country takes that approach. Other countries opt for a more collaborative model, with different agencies sharing information and resources.
So you might have the tax authorities working with the police, intelligence agencies, maybe even international organizations.
Exactly. The key is to have a system where everyone knows their role, communication is seamless, and there's a united front against tax crime.
Makes sense. You don't want any information slipping through the cracks.
Exactly. Because in the world of financial crime, knowledge is power.
All right, so we've got a solid foundation here. Laws, strategies, clear responsibilities, and the right tools to get the job done. What else do countries need to effectively tackle tax crime? Let's find out in part 2 of our deep dive into the OECD's 10 principles. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're picking up our conversation about tackling international tax crime armed with the OECD's 10 global principles. We've covered the legal framework, the need for smart strategies, and even touched on the exciting world of financial forensics. But it seems like none of that would matter without
Resources, right. It's like that old saying, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. In this case, you can't catch tax cheats without investing in the right resources.
Exactly. So principle number 6 is all about making sure countries have the manpower, the technology, and yes, the funding to make it all happen. I mean, we're not talking about balancing checkbooks here. This is high-level financial detective work.
You're absolutely right. And the report actually highlights some pretty impressive numbers. Norway, for example, boasts a whopping 1,500% return on investment for its tax crime fighting efforts.
Hold on. Did you say 1,500%? That's like turning $1 into $15. What are they doing over there? Investing in a money duplicating machine?
Well, not quite, but it does highlight how effectively they've targeted their resources. They've invested in specialized training for their investigators, cutting-edge data analysis tools, think AI and machine learning, and they've really prioritized international cooperation. They're not just catching the small fish. They're going after the big players, and it's clearly paying off.
That's amazing. It sounds like a masterclass in efficient resource allocation.
It really is, and it underscores a crucial point. Investing in tax crime investigation isn't just about punishing wrongdoers. It's about recouping lost revenue that can be used to fund essential public services. It's an investment that benefits everyone.
Okay, I'm convinced. More funding for financial forensics. But let's move on to principle number 7, which connects tax crime to another shady practice, money laundering. I have a feeling things are about to get even more intriguing.
You're not wrong, because often tax crimes are just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Think about it. You evade taxes, and now you've got a pile of money that you can't exactly deposit in your local bank without raising some eyebrows.
Right, because suddenly you're driving a fancy sports car and the tax man's going to wonder where you got the cash.
Exactly. So what do? You launder it. You try to make that dirty money look clean by funneling it through shell companies, offshore accounts, or even legitimate businesses.
So are we talking about like elaborate schemes to make this money look like it came from a legitimate source?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where designating tax crimes as a predicate offense for money laundering becomes so important.
Okay, predicate offense. That sounds pretty technical. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. Imagine it like this. You're building a house of cards. Money laundering is the whole structure, but it relies on a base that's the predicate offense, the underlying crime that generated the dirty money.
So in this case, the predicate offense would be the tax crime itself.
Exactly. And by making that link, authorities gain powerful tools. It means they can go after both the tax crime and the money laundering operation, potentially leading to much harsher penalties.
It's like hitting them with a double whammy. But it's not just about punishment, right? I'm guessing this also helps with information sharing.
You got it. By classifying tax crimes as predicate offenses, it triggers a whole chain reaction. Financial institutions are now required to report suspicious transactions that might be linked to tax evasion. This information can then be shared with tax authorities, police, intelligence agencies, even their counterparts in other countries.
Wow. So it's like setting off a domino effect of investigations. One little clue could unravel a whole criminal network.
That's the idea. And it highlights just how interconnected these crimes often are.
Okay. So we've got international information sharing, but what about cooperation within a country's own borders? It's got to be tough to wrangle all those different agencies, the tax folks, the police. Everyone's got their own priorities.
You're absolutely right. So principle number 8 comes in domestic interagency cooperation. Because to effectively fight tax crime, you need all hands on deck, working together seamlessly.
Makes sense. You don't want one agency sitting on a crucial piece of information that another agency desperately needs. That's how cases go cold.
Exactly. And the report gives some interesting examples of how countries are breaking down these silos. We're talking joint task forces, shared databases, even physically co-locating personnel from different agencies in the same building.
Wait, so you've got tax agents rubbing shoulders with police detectives by the coffee machine. That sounds like the setup for a buddy cop movie.
Right. It might seem unusual, but it's all about fostering communication and building trust. Because when everyone has access to the same information and understands each other's roles, it leads to faster, more effective investigations.
I can see that, and it probably makes for some interesting water cooler conversations.
I'm sure. But joking aside, this kind of collaboration is essential, especially when you consider how complex these investigations often are. We're talking about following paper trails across borders, tracking down shell companies, analyzing mountains of financial data.
Yeah.
It takes a team effort to connect all the dots.
Absolutely. And speaking of crossing borders, I have a feeling that's where our next principle comes into play. After all, criminals don't exactly respect international boundaries, do they?
They certainly don't. And in a world of offshore accounts, shell companies, and easily transferable digital assets, international cooperation is more crucial than ever.
So principle number 9 is all about countries teaming up to catch these globe-trotting tax evaders.
You got it. And this isn't just a matter of good faith. There are actual legal frameworks in place to make it happen. We're talking about tax information exchange agreements and mutual legal assistance treaties, which allow countries to share information and evidence with each other.
Okay, those sound a little bureaucratic. Are we talking about mountains of paperwork and diplomatic red tape?
It can get complicated, that's for sure. The report actually highlights some of the obstacles that arise in cross-border investigations. Language barriers, for one, also different legal systems, and even just figuring out who to contact in another country can be a real headache.
So even with the best intentions, things can get lost in translation, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. But But despite the challenges, international cooperation has led to some major victories. We're
Let's
talking about
hear.
recovering billions of dollars in lost revenue and shutting down some seriously shady operations.
Wow. So it's a testament to what can be achieved when countries put aside their differences and work together towards a common goal.
Absolutely. Because when it comes to fighting tax crime, a global problem requires a global solution.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground here, but before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more principle to discuss, and it's a big one. Protecting the rights of those accused.
That's right, because even when we're talking about catching tax evaders, it's crucial to ensure that everyone is treated fairly and that the rule of law is upheld.
Let's delve into that right after this short break. Stay with us. And we're back with the final part of our deep dive into the OECD's 10 global principles for combating tax crime. We've talked about everything from financial forensics to international cooperation, but now it's time to shift gears and talk about something absolutely crucial, protecting the rights of those accused.
It's a fundamental principle of any justice system, isn't it? Even
Yeah.
even when pursuing those who've potentially broken the law, we can't toss aside fairness and due process.
Right, because as we've all seen in those legal dramas, things can go very wrong when those rights are violated. Evidence gets thrown out, cases crumble, and justice isn't served.
Precisely. And this principle is particularly relevant in tax investigations,
Yeah.
where the line between a civil audit and a criminal investigation can get blurry. Imagine imagine thinking you're dealing with a routine check of your tax records only to find yourself facing criminal charges. It happens.
Wow. That's unsettling. It's like the ground shifting beneath your feet.
Exactly. And that's why the OECD stresses the importance of clear safeguards. They emphasize the presumption of innocence, the right to remain silent, the right to legal counsel, all those fundamental protections that ensure a fair process.
So it's about making sure that everyone, regardless of the accusations against them, has the opportunity to defend themselves, and that any action taken is proportionate and just.
Precise. It's about maintaining the integrity of the system as a whole.
That makes sense. You don't want to create a system where people feel like they're guilty until proven innocent, or that they're being targeted unfairly.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between being tough on tax crime and upholding everyone's rights.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the OECD's 10 global principles, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? Someone who's clearly interested in understanding this complex world of international tax crime.
Well, I think the first takeaway is just how important this issue is. Tax crime isn't a victimless crime. It robs countries of resources that could be used to fund essential services, from education and healthcare to infrastructure and social programs.
It's like stealing from the public piggy bank.
Exactly. And it impacts everyone, not just those directly targeted. The second takeaway is that fighting tax crime requires a multifaceted approach. It's not just about catching the bad guys. It's about understanding the complexities, closing loopholes, promoting transparency, and fostering international cooperation.
Right, because as we've discussed, criminals are always finding new ways to exploit the system, whether it's through shell companies, offshore accounts, or those shady Zapper software programs we talked about.
Absolutely. And that's why staying ahead of the curve is so crucial. This OECD report isn't meant to be a static document. It's a call to action. It's about constantly adapting, investing in new technologies and training, and working together to create a fairer, more transparent global financial system.
It sounds like the fight against tax crime is a marathon, not a sprint.
Very well said. And as we've seen from Norway's example with its impressive 1,500% return on investment, putting in the effort and resources can lead to significant rewards.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredibly insightful journey. We've gone from the basics of defining tax crime all the way to the importance of protecting individual rights and everything in between. It's clear that this is a constantly evolving field, and it's reassuring to know that organizations like the OECD are working tirelessly to level the playing field.
They are indeed. And for our listener, I think the most important takeaway is this: knowledge is power. By understanding how tax crime works, the techniques used, and the global efforts to combat it, you're better equipped to protect yourself, your business, and your community.
Couldn't agree more. So as we sign off, here's a final thought to ponder.
Yeah.
What innovations do you think will be crucial in the fight against tax crime in the years ahead? Artificial intelligence, new forms of international collaboration. Let us know your thoughts.
It's an intriguing question,
Yeah.
and one that deserves further exploration.
It certainly does. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of international tax crime. Until next time, stay curious.